Hey everyone, welcome back to another one of my videos. As you already saw in the title, today's a pretty special video. So I have a friend called Jessica, and she will graduate very soon from the University of Chicago. We actually went to the same high school, and she offered to talk with me about her experience in college and things that she thinks will be very helpful to upcoming college freshmen to get the most out of your college experience and just overall what she learned from her experience throughout college. So let's get into it. Do you want to just introduce yourself? I mean, I already in my intro I mentioned that you went to UChicago, but do you want to just talk about your major or what clubs and activities you were involved in, and just future plans that you have at least now?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently a senior at UChicago. Haven't graduated yet. Will be graduating on Saturday, which is kind of crazy to think about. I majored in public policy and minored in Romance languages, particularly French, because we had to choose a language there. And in terms of clubs and activities that I was a part of, I would say there was probably like three or four that were my main priorities, even throughout the 4 years. Like that didn't change too much. So the first one I was heavily involved with was an organization called MECHA, which stands for Movimiento Estudiantil Chicanx Teslan, which is like a Latinx activist type organization. And I was also involved in the Organization of Latin American Students, um, and then a center on campus for first generation low income students called the CCFS. Um, and I think my last one that was kind of like a side thing was the Laboris and Vox Circus. So I did acrobatics and like juggling and different types of stuff at UChicago as well.
That sounds really cool. Did you start that during college, or was it like do you already know how to juggle and stuff?
I had learned how to juggle in middle school, but doing like silks and like trapeze and acrobatics, that was totally new. I'd never done that before.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you mentioned, so for future plans, how is it like, just graduating right now, and what plans do you, how far out are your plans right now? Like, I mean, you don't have to give any details, but how is it looking for you right now?
Yeah, it's definitely been very interesting. I was anxious as a senior to kind of find out what my next move was. I knew I didn't want to do grad school right away, and so I started looking at jobs very early on, probably in like October. And I was lucky that just before, I think it was like 2 days before, classes started getting moved online and everything, I actually got a job offer. So in August, I will be moving to Florida, and I will be starting as a financial analyst for Home Depot there.
Nice. Have you been to Florida before? That's
Um, I went when I was little, we went to Orlando for Disney, and I went once about 2 years ago, also for vacation, but I've never really been to northern Florida. I
Mhm.
think that'll be different.
Yeah. The only thing I know about Florida is that it's a very hot place. Um,
Yeah, I've hot and humid.
yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. So as I also mentioned in my intro, I kind of just want to focus also just on your experience during your college years. Kind of to talk to students who may be starting. But yeah. So you are gonna graduate from UChicago really soon, so that's very exciting. Do you remember why you chose UChicago? Like back then when you were applying senior year.
Yeah, I think one of the worries I had as a senior was trying to get enough money to actually like fund my way through college because I didn't want loans, even though I guess college counselors say that loans aren't necessarily a bad thing. I wanted to avoid them at all costs. And so when I got UChicago's acceptance letter, I was excited, of course, at first. But then the next question was, am I going to be able to afford to go there? And shortly after their acceptance letter, I got their financial aid package, and it was all covered for all 4 years. Because UChicago has a program called the Odyssey Scholars Program, which means that they cover 100% of need-based aid. So everything there was covered, and they also gave me an internship after my freshman year, which was really exciting. And so honestly, the reason why I decided to go there was for the money. I was kind of scared because I knew UChicago had a reputation for being super hard, super intense. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in that kind of environment, but I decided to give it a try at least for a year because, I wasn't going to lose anything going to UChicago for a year. And then I just kind of ended up sticking around for 4 instead of 1 year.
Yeah, I think just touching on like the money aspect, I feel like that's just a worry that a lot of people tend to have. But then like what's good, about like very selective schools, like it's actually what I mentioned, what I talked about in my last video about financial aid. They have a lot more money than what people tend to think. Yeah. And connecting to what you were saying about what you heard about UChicago being a very tough place, did like UChicago live up to those expectations? I mean, was it actually like a very rigorous place, or how was that?
Yeah, I would say in terms of academics, it definitely is very rigorous. There were points at UChicago where I didn't get the score I wanted to on a test or on a homework assignment, and I had to be intentional about going to teaching assistants or to professors and asking for help during office hours. But I think as a whole, what I realized after being at UChicago for a while was that, there are people who are super intense and all they do is academics and they just kind of stay in their room and study all the time. There are also people, and the majority of UChicago students, at least that I encountered, are like this, is that, they're super passionate about academics, but also really passionate about, saving the environment, about getting involved with community service, about, reaching out into Chicago's outside communities. So I found that it wasn't people didn't have a one-track mind. It was more of combining their different interests and using UChicago and their education at UChicago to kind of get them somewhere. And I think those are the people I tended to surround myself by. And so it didn't feel at the end of the day as intense because I felt like I had a good network of people who weren't just solely focused on academics.
That's good. Do you think that was like one of your favorite aspects of Chicago, or like what was your favorite and least favorite aspects of your college experience there?
Yeah, I would say favorite is definitely the people. Like I met some really incredible people who, started taking leadership on a lot of things. Like we organized a lot of, little like rallies on campus and protests when, things weren't going the way we wanted them to be going. And also just a lot of people that I don't think I would have been able to meet otherwise. Like I met people from Egypt, I met people from China, I met people from like Europe, all over the place. And that was also really cool. I think on the other side of that, some of my least favorite parts was that, as like a first generation low income college student, like I wanted to get certain resources that Chicago didn't necessarily have. And sometimes it felt like it was kind of an uphill battle trying to advocate for those resources. Like I remember we were trying to advocate for the center I mentioned before, the CCSS, to stay the same in terms of structure because we really liked it that way. And we found it really beneficial, but UChicago said it was an administrative decision and not a student decision. So that can be kind of tricky at times when you are trying to advocate for something, but you don't really feel heard or listened to. So that was something I didn't expect at UChicago, but I guess happens at UChicago and in a lot of other places as well.
Yeah, I've definitely like felt like a theme of like administration versus student battle at a many different colleges. So I mean, at least it's not something that was just especially like uniquely bad about you, Chicago. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you'll find that regardless of the college.
Mhm. Yeah, and so you mentioned that you are majoring in like public policy and minoring in Romance languages, but did you know that you wanted to study either of those when like when you started college?
I did not. I actually went into college. I applied undecided, but in my mind, I had decided I wanted to be a computer science major. But I didn't take any classes my freshman year, and so I took my first computer science class at UChicago my sophomore year, and I realized it was just not my thing. Like I was very kind of just like upset about taking computer science. Like I wasn't enjoying myself. It was taking up more of the time I was willing to put into it. And so I remember during that time when I just didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure what else I wanted to major in, if not CS. A friend sat down with me and we went through all the majors on the college catalog. And he actually pulled up public policy. He was like, "Oh, I think you might be interested in this." And so I decided to take a class for the next quarter, and I actually really liked it. I had taken statistics and economics, and I found that it was a really kind of interdisciplinary major, and it wasn't super theory based. UChicago tends to be very theoretical, even in things like math or econ. But what I liked about public policy is it was like political science, some economics, statistics. So I felt like it was a lot of different things that I got to take, which I really enjoyed.
Is there a particular reason why you took your first computer science class until sophomore year, or?
Yeah. So I was only taking 3 classes for my freshman year just because I didn't want to overwhelm myself too soon. And I wanted to get the core requirements out of the way. So I was taking kind of things that I knew I would have to get out of the way first. And computer science classes can be a little competitive to get into. And so even when I did get into it my second year, I was on the wait list for a really long time. And then eventually, like the day before classes start was when I actually got off the wait list to get into the class.
Okay. Yeah, and for like people watching, like UChicago has like core requirements, which, as far as I know, are like there's like not a kind of extensive list of them, which is actually like on the opposite end of the spectrum to Brown, which is where I'm going, which actually has like no requirements.
I think that'll be really nice because UChicago, we have a lot. Like everything. Like I took chemistry and biology. Yep,
Well, I mean, it's a well-rounded education, right?
for sure.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that like your friend brought up public policy, and then you like that like less theoretical aspect of it. Um, was it like a specific class that made you want to actually major on that, or was it like a specific experience, or was it just a thing that you slowly realized that it was something that you wanted to major in?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I realized is that public policy as a major could be really flexible. Like I could make it what I wanted to be. There were some classes that, of course, I had to take, but I took a class called Race in American Public Schools, taught by Professor Eve Ewing, who's like the coolest person I know. She's my favorite professor on campus. And it was in that class that we were talking about education and talked about CPS. We talked about, public schooling just in general in the US. And it was there that I realized, I'm really interested in taking more of these classes. And it tied in very well with public policy because I had that space to kind of specialize in something else that wasn't directly related to my major. And so I really enjoyed kind of having that openness to decide like, oh, you know what, I really like this and I want to pursue it more. And it still fits into my major. And so I like that I was able to kind of pick and choose what I wanted to do and how I wanted to kind of approach public policy.
That sounds really cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and was it the one of the classes that you took for public policy one of your favorite classes that you took at Chicago, or was it just something completely out there?
I would say it was one of the favorite classes I took at UChicago. I took race in American public schools because of the professor that I'd heard of before and heard a lot of great things about. And then to see that it fit into public policy, I was like, wow, this is really, really great. And even now, after finishing all of my classes, I still look back and, really appreciate having taken that class.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you took 3 classes for a semester, or like your first like freshman year, to not overwhelm yourself. Did you like end up taking more classes as like per semester as like your years went on?
Yeah, so at UChicago, for every quarter, we are allowed to take a minimum of 3 classes to be a full time student. And usually it was a maximum of 4. Now they've opened it up to 5 this past year. And so I ended up taking 4 a few quarters throughout undergrad, just because I wanted to, sometimes there are classes that are only offered in the spring or only offered in the winter or only offered in the fall. And so it just becomes kind of easier to take them when they are offered. And so that's when I usually pick up on 4. But luckily, I was able to do it so that now my 4th year, I took only 3 because I knew I was going to have to write a BA thesis. And so I wanted to have time and space to prepare outside of classes.
Yeah, and I mean, along with like taking those classes, well, I mean, given that amount, plus all the activities that you mentioned you were involved in, how like difficult or easy, I'm not sure, was it easy like to maintain a social life and just free time or like downtime?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was an adjustment at first. I had a really great roommate my freshman year, and so it was really easy for us to, just get together and do homework or go to events together. And because we were rooming together, I think it kind of allowed me to have a good balance of, I was doing homework in my room, but I didn't feel overwhelmed because I was also doing homework with someone else. And I realized that that's how a lot of people, at least at UChicago, hang out during the quarter. It's, hey, do you want to go to this coffee shop and do homework together? Or like, hey, do you want to go grab lunch together? Because it's easier to kind of go out and socialize on something that you're already would be doing on by yourself. Um, but when it came to like clubs and extracurricular activities, I found it really nice because, at a club meeting that I knew I had to go to, I was already seeing, 5 or 6 different friends there. And so it was easy to go there, catch up, do what I needed to do, and then move on. So I think that was a good thing, kind of having friends that intersect with extracurriculars, classes, roommates, and those were really the people that I got to spend my most time with.
So it seems that like as opposed to high school where like you have classes with maybe some of your friends and but then you like decide to like meet at like a park or someone's house or something, it's more like, oh, at the school activities, that's where you're getting your socializing done.
Yeah, and I think that's especially true for colleges in which most of the students are kind of rooming there and dorming there, because a lot of the friends ended up being people that I, lived in the same building with, and so it was easy for us to catch up at like 10 p.m. and go study at a study room together, because we were all in that same space. Like no one was going home like an hour away or something. Like we were all kind of there hanging out with each other.
And to keep that balance of like social life and like academic work, do you have any like tips for that?
Yeah, I'd say one of the most important things that definitely takes a little to kind of get used to is the self-care aspect. I think in high school you go to school and then you come home and it's very easy in your mind to think like, okay, this is my home life. Like I can relax a little bit here. You kind of bring your guard down a little bit. But in college, your school life and your home life are intertwined. Like it's really just one. And so it becomes harder to, feel like you have space to decompress, mentally and physically. And so I would say a big thing is kind of recognizing what self-care means to you, like read a book or watch Netflix or whatever, and kind of making the time for that and making it intentional so that, making it something that you can't really negotiate. Like, this is the time where I'm going to go hang out with friends and book that in your calendar. And then regardless of what happens, be like, okay, like this is the time for me. Like I set it aside just like you would for going to class or doing homework. I think that's really important, and it really worked for me throughout my 4 years.
Yeah, that's kind of like really funny to me how just thinking of just putting like literally everything on like a calendar, because I mean at least personally I think that's gonna be a pretty big adjustment. I mean thinking like right now at least I think for most high schoolers it's like social life is something that like is kind of planned here and there, but it's not like, oh, I need to make sure I like get some like socializing and self care, otherwise I'm gonna like my mental health is just gonna go down the drain.
Yeah, and it definitely takes a while to realize that because at least like I went in with the assumption like, oh, it'll just like work out, like it'll happen, we'll hang out, and then it doesn't happen, and you don't catch up with people. So I think scheduling is definitely a good tool to have.
Yeah. And yeah, and along with again that like social aspect with dorm life, so from what I know, most students at UChicago live in dorms, correct? That's right. Um what's something that you didn't expect about like living in a dorm?
Yeah, I think when I thought of dorming somewhere, especially in Chicago, I thought of these like big dorms where I'd be rooming with a bunch of people, like wouldn't really know who I was living with, and it was not like that at all. At least for UChicago, we have a housing system, and so within the big dorms, there are like small little houses with like 80-ish students, and each house has two RAs and a resident head, which is like a family or a couple who are just kind of overseeing everything. And I didn't realize, I guess, coming into UChicago that the people in my house would end up being like really close friends, almost like family in the sense that, they would be the people that I would go out to parties with. They'd be the people I would study with, or just hang out in their apartment with and not really do much. I didn't realize how much I would kind of depend on that as a support system to have throughout college, like whether it be to share something good, or to look for support in a bad moment. I don't think I kind of looked at dorming in that way, that it could kind of provide that sort of family system for me and provide some of my closest friends.
Hmm. Also a little bit like off tangent from that. Does like you Chicago have like a Greek life system, or is it just mostly like that like housing system?
Yeah, so UChicago has sororities and fraternities. Fraternities have their own houses, just like off the outskirts of campus. Sororities don't. And so most sororities just end up getting apartments together somewhere in a building. But frat houses are definitely there. They're not a very big part of life at UChicago. They host some parties here and there, but they are there, I guess, for people who want to get involved with them.
And like, would you say like partying is kind of a big thing at U Chicago, or not really?
Um, Not too much. There are a few parties like every Wednesday night at UChicago was bar night at a fraternity, and so if you wanted to go, you could go to bar night. It was free. You just had to buy your drinks. Um, but other than that, I would say, I mean, out of the 10 weeks of the quarter, there was probably a party like 5 or 6 weekends. So it was there, but it wasn't a huge part of
Right.
campus life.
Yeah, and yeah, going back to like the roommate, to the roommate topic, um, what would you say like is a good like tip like to have like a healthy relationship with your roommate since you're seeing them every single day?
Yeah, I would definitely say communication is key. I know people say that a lot when you talk about roommates, but I think it's really important because, for you, something that, you might have done your entire life and isn't a big deal might actually really bug someone. And so I remember sitting down and talking with my roommate once we had been paired. We were talking about, okay, like if you ever end up dating someone, will that person be allowed to spend the night? Or, what time do you go to bed? Like, do you want the lights out? Would you prefer if I was still doing homework to go do homework somewhere else? So just kind of little things even before you start rooming together. And then I would say also having like check-ins just to be like, hey, like everything feels good for me, but I just wanted to see if like there was anything that I may have done without knowing it that like could have upset you in some way, or maybe you're leaving clothes on the floor and it's going into your roommate's side of the room. Like I think it's good to have that constant and consistent communication throughout, even if you think things are fine, because I think a lot of the times you can maybe not see a problem, but it actually is really annoying your roommate. They just don't know how to say something or how to bring it up. Um, so I would say keeping that communication open is really important.
I mean, I feel like in a lot of aspects, it just sounds like a normal like relationship. Like, so yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, along with like with dorming and like communicating with your roommate, what do you think is something that you think everyone should bring to college to have in their dorm, like specifically?
Yeah. So there's this company that I think works with all, if not most, colleges that provides like a mini fridge and a microwave set, and they bring it into your dorm room before you move in, and then they take it out, so you don't really have to move it yourself. I really wish I'd had one of those because so in 4 years I never had a mini fridge. The microwave was four floors below where I was living, so was the refrigerator. And so every time I wanted to eat something, or I had leftovers, I didn't want to put it in the communal fridge for everyone to kind of see or take. And so I would just definitely recommend having a fridge and a small microwave just so you could kind of heat things up when you're hungry or put in some snacks in your fridge. I know some schools have like regulations against microwaves specifically, but this one company, at least at UChicago, was approved to kind of bring this whole set in and put it in your own room.
I mean, at least it sounds like you got to work out every time you had to go down there.
For sure, I definitely had to think about it. Like, am I really hungry? Go down 4 flights of stairs.
Yeah, yeah. So then, I mean, now I mean, to me, it feels just personally feels crazy to be graduating from high school, but I can only imagine what it must feel like graduating from college very soon. Um, and so then, like looking back at your time, the past 4 years there, if you could like just change one thing about your time in college at U Chicago, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this definitely kind of hits home a little bit because I did a summer program before UChicago, from for, like a part of the university where I got to meet a lot of people. And at this summer program, I met this guy who then I started dating almost immediately into my freshman year. I think if I could change something, it would be not to get into a relationship right as I was getting into college, because at least for me, it became super easy to have, friends that were directly related to this person that I was dating, and we kind of started our college career together, and it was like that for a while. But then, when things inevitably don't work out, you're kind of left like, oh, who's your friend? Who's my friend? Like, what do I do now? Versus, I think if you give yourself time to explore college and the college experience for a little bit on your own, it can feel more of like more ownership of like, oh, this is like my college independent of this person and kind of what this person does, or who we're friends with. Like, I think it gives you more time and space to kind of figure things out on your own for a little bit versus leaning on another person. And I think that's something I wish I could have done, just kind of waited it out a little bit more before getting into a relationship.
Yeah, so kind of just like figuring everything out right before like you actually decide to add this whole aspect to your life.
Yeah, for sure. Because it can be tricky, trying to navigate getting into a new relationship and going into college and figuring out what it means to kind of live on my own for the first time. It's like a lot of factors going in at that point.
Yeah, another thing with like relationships when I think of like friendships. So like right now I'm just thinking of like, oh, well one of my friends, she's going to Stanford, so we're going to be like completely across the country from each other, and like, I'm going to try to like keep in touch with and all of that. But like you as now that 4 years later, how have your like friendships and just overall relationships from high school how have they changed from like from the time you started to now?
Yeah, I would say I've seen a little bit of, both keeping friendships and dropping some friendships. Um, I was friends with someone who I met in high jump in like seventh grade. And so, we've been friends through high school and we stayed friends through college and we're friends now. And I think part of what made it easy was that, we both knew that even if we didn't talk every day, like we were still there for each other. Like if something ever happened that I wanted to talk to her with, I knew she was available and she was there. And I would say that she would feel the same way about me. So I think having those like really close friends who you've known forever, like those friendships stay regardless of how often you talk. I would say for friendships that maybe aren't as well developed, or where you'll be kind of super far away, I think it's still doable to keep a friendship. Like you don't just have to automatically like drop people, but I think it does require kind of planning and catching up however often it works for you guys. And when someone comes back in town for winter break or spring break, like making the time. I think if someone is really important to you, um, you will make the time to meet with them as well as they will make the time to meet with you. And I think that's kind of how you realize what you really mean to someone is, if they're willing to put in the work to, meet up downtown or go somewhere to grab coffee. And I think because you're apart, it makes those moments when you are together kind of a little sweeter and a little better, because you don't have them as often as you used to anymore.
How was that aspect in like relation to like your family? So since I mean you were still like in the same city, basically, how was that like? Did you consider being moving going to another state for college, or and like now that you ended up going to like college in like the same city, did you like get to see them more often you think you had if you had gone to college out of state?
Yeah, so I would say I definitely looked at colleges outside of Illinois, outside of Chicago. I actually didn't want to stay in Chicago. I really wanted to go to Northwestern. Then I got rejected from Northwestern, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm leaving Chicago. And my college counselor from high school was like, wait, but you still applied to another school. Like, wait to hear back. Um, so once I did decide on UChicago, I think because I decided on it for the money, I was like, okay, like I know I might want to explore something else, but they're offering me a really good package. I need to take it. Um, but I think being in the same city as my family was really kind of cool and really awesome in a lot of ways. Like I liked that I was able to go home as many times as I wanted to, and I didn't have to pay for a plane ticket. I think that was really handy, and not getting to miss on some of the family, reunions or birthdays that happened here or there. Like I like being able to go home for that. But I think on the other side, and this is something I struggled with personally, I don't know if other people kind of go through it as well, is that, when something came up with family, like a birthday party, like I really wanted to go to that. But then there was a thing on campus that I also really wanted to go to. And so it became tricky, at least for me, to balance what I felt to be my responsibilities to my family now that I was in the same city, but also kind of wanting to, spend time with friends or go do this other thing. And so I felt like every time something like that came up, I was thinking about it a lot of like, okay, what feels like the best decision to take right now? And how can I best kind of be there for my family, but also be there for my friends, but also be there for myself. So it was kind of a lot of conversations with myself, with family, with other friends, and kind of managing expectations on both ends of like, I'm able to commit to this, but this other thing that's happening 2 weekends from now, like, I don't know if I'll be able to make that. And it's sometimes tough conversations to have, but I think they are, for the most part, useful in order to ensure that there's not any kind of like misunderstandings.
Yeah, I mean, college just sounds like a place to just always be like just getting to know yourself, right, and to like talk to yourself. And I mean, do you think college changes people?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. At least speaking from my experience, I think there's kind of two sides to the coin. The first side is, you know, college, at least for me, made me really aware of things going on in the world and helped me be vocal about them. I think before, in high school or in elementary school, I knew things that were going on, but I didn't really have much of an opinion. I didn't really do much about things. I was just like, oh yeah, that's an issue. It's happening. I'm just here in Chicago. But I think in college, I realized how much agency a person can have and how much voice a person can have. And so I think I became more vocal about my opinions. I became more vocal about issues that I was passionate about. So I think that's one thing that's changed. And also, at least for me, the 4 years at UChicago were, some of the best 4 years of my life, but also some of the hardest 4 years of my life. There were things that happened in college where, I got to move to the suburbs. Um, my parents got divorced and then remarried. And then I also dated someone, like it was my first kind of long-term-ish relationship. And then we broke up. And so it was a lot of ups and downs that I think, ultimately kind of helped me land to the person I am today. Like I also, throughout college, I lived in 2 different countries over the summer. And so that was a whole new adjustment for me as well. But I think overall, I've learned a lot of kind of resiliency, learning how to lean on my support system, like even if they're miles and miles away in a different country. I've learned to kind of work through hard moments and work through uncertainty, which I think is really important. And it comes up especially in moments like now where I'm heading into a job force, not quite knowing what's waiting for me, but kind of willing to take that first step.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, it just seems, I mean, you, based on like the way you're speaking, it just seems like you do like, college did help you just like ground yourself into like the person that you are, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, before we, like say goodbye, just something like, what do you think is something that anyone starting college soon should hear or just know, like before they start?
Yeah, for sure. I would say going into college is a really exciting time, and you're excited to try a lot of things, do everything that comes your way, like never say no to an opportunity, which I think are definitely good things, and it's good to be enthusiastic and passionate about things. But I think inevitably, like in any other part of life, like things will be hard at some point. Whether it be classes, friendships, like family, something will come up that will kind of challenge you in a new way. There will be obstacles that come your way. I think something to remember is that you're never going through something alone. It can be easy sometimes to feel isolated, like you're the only one going through it, like no one else is going to understand. But there's a network of, friends, whether it be from college or from high school, that are there to support you. There's family that's there to support you, even if it's, from a different state. And I think, I was in college, I was really involved with the first generation, low income, documented, undocumented, and immigrant communities on campus. And I got to speak a lot through a lot of people because of my BA thesis. I was focusing particularly on the experiences of first gen low income students. And one of the pieces of feedback that I heard the most was that people didn't feel like they had a sense of community, which is definitely the institution's fault. But I also think it's good that when you feel like you need to talk to someone or feel like you need to go out with friends for your own kind of self-care's sake, to know that there are people there. There are people willing to support you, just like you would help out a friend. There are friends willing to help you out, and advisors and faculty and everything. And so I would say just don't feel alone. Like, feel like you deserve to be on that campus and really get the most that you want to get out of it, which I think hopefully, will help you become the person that you will be after 4 years. Because I think 4 years, it seems like a lot of time, but goes by really, really quickly. So it's important to make the most of the time there while you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you so much for like answering all these questions and like, helping me and like all the other like, upcoming college students.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it was really great to get to talk to you a little bit about UChicago, and I hope some of the things I said were applicable, even if you're not going specifically to UChicago. I'm really excited for you to go to Brown. I think it'll be a really great experience to go do that.
Thank you so much. If you have actually any questions about Jessica's experience in college or any other things you would like her to answer, please leave them down in the comments below. I will actually tell her what the questions that come up are, or she will actually come into the video and actually answer your questions. I also left the link to her YouTube channel down below and to her Instagram. She's actually also wanting to create a YouTube channel, so it would be nice to help her get started with some subscribers. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions, suggestions about what I should do in the future, please leave it down below. Stay safe and having an amazing day. Bye.